just as a bit of an introduction, I'm John Burrows. I'm a business strategy consultant for Iomart. Iomart are a managed, for those of you who don't know, Iomart are a managed hybrid cloud service provider, specialising in all areas of IT, from core infrastructure through data management and through cybersecurity. I've been asked to join this session today to give you an overview about emerging data and security risks in a post-Brexit working from home world. So just a very quick overview, as I say, for those of you who are not familiar with Iomart, we're an AIM listed organisation, head office up in Glasgow, been around for sort of 20 odd years now. We enable lots of organisations in both public sector, corporate sector and in the technology space to both provide IT, compute and data management services to lots of different users up and down the country and globally, and through our network of 29 international data centres, but also more importantly providing the security and the data protection services that are needed to ensure that in this modern world that organisations can mitigate their compliance risks while also enabling them to drive competitive advantage in their given marketplace. So just wanted to reflect at the outset of today's session on the changes that we've seen happen, and the main things that are in and around us as we speak today, both in terms of the changes that have been impinged on organisations due to the onset of COVID-19, and lastly also in terms of what's coming up over the sort of next 3 or 4 months as well. So we've been seen working with our organisations, both prospective and existing customers up and down the land, as I'm sure everyone has seen themselves. There's been such a big swathe of change of movement of working requirements to remotely working from home during lockdown, back to not necessarily working from home, but encouraged to go back into the office. And now it looks like everyone's looking to be pushed back into the other direction again, to be working from home more and more, and to make sure that we can work safely and securely and make sure that everyone's health is at the forefront of what's going on within organisations, while still trying to maintain business operations as well. So we've been working with Harvey Nash and KPMG, and they created a survey of over 400 CIOs globally to take a view of what the impact, the long-term position around working from home is likely to look like as this change has now come about. And as you can see from the graphics that's there in front of us, between 21 and 50% of organisations actually believe that 45% of those organisations believe that the users in their IT estate are likely to be working from home between 21 to 50%. Predominantly permanently as we move out of the back end of the position that we're currently in at the moment, and 24% believe that more than half are going to be working permanently remotely, which is obviously a big shift change in the way that organisations have been historically working. Now the other main change that obviously is looming on the horizon, that's almost the forgotten challenge. Somewhat, and certainly has been off the radar for a lot of people over the last 6 to 9 months, has been the impending movement out of the EU from a Britain point of view, i.e. Brexit, and the challenges that that's likely to bring about. And I think one of the things that we've certainly seen as an organisation over the last 6 to 12 months has very much been a big focus on Brexit, what was going to happen, what that was going to mean in terms of data residency, whether or not the GDPR regulations were going to be enforceable within the UK, whether or not we were going to need to have similar regulations that are set out to sit alongside the GDPR, or what they may look like moving forward. And obviously the pandemic has changed that focus. But I think it's definitely worthwhile re-emphasising that position is still there, and the focus and consideration for it certainly still needs to be taken into account. From our understanding, as far as things stand at the moment, GDPR regulations will always be in place and always will be impinged onto organisations who work within the UK if they have any data that sits residing across anyone that is a European citizen. And obviously there will be legislation that will be drafted that will keep us in alignment with those regulations, because they are there for protection of citizens and for a very good reason, but also it does have a big impact on how organisations need to consider their security and their data management practices, not just from a privacy and consent point of view at the front end, which obviously there are other speakers, other sessions that are set up today to focus on that area, but also in terms of protecting the data at the back end and making sure that the data that is stored and that's within organisations for whatever reason they might be harvesting that information, whether it be for marketing purposes, whether it be for personal information, for credit card payment plans, whatever it might be, that data is held in the strictest and securest possible ways moving forwards. And really that's what we want to focus on today. As I say, that's our area of specialization, and that's what we really focus in on, enabling organizations to maintain both the data management and security posture. As you've seen, certainly over the last 6 months as well, alongside the challenges that everyone's been faced with COVID and with Brexit coming up, there's been a huge rise in cyber attacks up and down the stack in lots of different areas. I'm sure everyone will be aware of the challenges that Travelex had going into administration, following on from an elongated DDoS attack that basically put them out of business on the back of a month's worth of time, where they were unable to get back up and running and operational. So obviously investing money into security and data privacy at this stage, although challenging for organizations because of the economic climate, certainly will be one of the key focus areas. It needs to be one of the key focus areas in making sure that businesses are viable for the future and can thrive and can still comply with all the legislation that's out there, as well as making sure that the rise in cyber attacks doesn't take them down and doesn't put them in even more of a vulnerable position. As a headline figures, there's been 410 GDPR fines in 2020 alone so far. 177 million euros of fines have been levied, which is a significant amount. That's ranged from €48 for a police officer in Estonia, right up to $50 million for Google. And there are others that are on the horizon that are coming about in the next 12 months or so, going right up to fines being levied into the hundreds, 120 million euros. So it's certainly still a really, really key area of focus for organizations, even though their eyes have been moved off and looked into other areas because of the onset of the pandemic and the challenges that that's brought. And in light of the new reality, the survey that we've been working through with Harvey Nash and KPMG has highlighted, that because of those challenges around data privacy from a GDPR point of view, and also the rise in attacks that's been happening due to unscrupulous people trying to take advantage of people's changing working habits to remote work, and the enhanced attack threat that's been around, the security and privacy has very much been at the very top of people's agendas in terms of where they're looking at making the technology investments within the market, and quite rightly. That's certainly been the trend. Obviously, there's a lot of other areas that people are focused in on. If you look back maybe 6 to 12 months or so ago, infrastructure, cloud, and customer experience and engagement probably would have been at the very top, but that's now been overtaken by security and privacy. So it's very much got a high level board perception. I'm sure that everyone who's on the session today will be cognizant to that. We'll probably have seen the change in how the board are looking at things within their organization, which is good, because it helps to enable the voice to be heard, to make sure that the investments can be made, but also puts a lot of pressure onto the governance teams and to the IT security teams and the infrastructure teams to make sure that they are protecting the services that they're delivering out for their users and out to their customers as well. As I say, there 47% security and privacy is having the highest technology investment focus. So if we look at the threat landscape as to how we see it today, there's lots and lots and lots of threats that are out there from various different areas, ranging from phishing attacks, internal unscrupulous employees who may have a grudge against the business or against the manager, or may see an opportunity for them to be able to make a quick buck if they're in a position where they're struggling with money themselves. People, lots and lots of rise in phishing attacks and DDoS attacks and ransomware. Certainly, ransomware has been a big one over the last 24 months or so as well. All of that, coupled with the fact that the fragmentation of where data sits currently, and the expanded attack panel and plane, whereby organizations historically used to have a very centralized data center centric topology with a network perimeter that was there that was quite relatively easy to control. We've got a lot of applications that have moved up into SaaS. There's a lot of applications that now sit in the public cloud sphere. There's a lot of IoT devices that are around. There's more and more people utilizing mobile devices and tablets, etc., etc., etc. So that ability and for unscrupulous people to be able to attack the overall IT landscape now of an organization is so much larger than it's ever been, and that poses all challenges to organizations right up and down the scale. Whether you're a small organization, whether you're a large enterprise who's very high profile in their given sector and in the public's consciousness, all of these organizations are being targeted by people that are looking either for ransomware attacks or looking to make hay out of people's vulnerabilities. What we've seen within the last 6 to 9 months since the pandemic's come around is that there's been an 83% rise in spear phishing, 62% rise in malware, and 21% rise in distributed denial of service attacks, which is huge. There were a lot of attacks that were going around even before COVID happened, but that rise since then has just gone to show that people are really trying to make hay out of people's changes and challenges that they're facing, even more so, which is unprecedented, I think, and one certainly to be more and more concerned about. So what the tip from our point of view, what do we see that organizations typically need to do when they're planning for the worst? Ultimately, I think the position nowadays that we see is it's not a matter of when organizations are going to be attacked. So not a matter of if an organization is going to have an attack, it's going to be a matter of when. And also it's not going to be a matter of if they get in, it's going to be a matter of when they get in. What do we do? How do we go about doing mitigating that threat or mitigating the impact that has on our business when it comes around? Because it's going to happen, because everyone's getting targeted across the board. You need to look at things like, how did they get in? How were we breached? When were we breached? What did they have access to? Do we have backup copies of our backup data that we can restore from? Have those backups been compromised, depending on what type of system we have, whether we have a relatively new system or an old system? What technology investments have been made to protect that data in the right way? And who do we tell, and what do we tell them? Yeah, obviously, a lot of data protection officers that are on the call, on the session today, very aware of your obligations to the ICO in terms of the notification periods. If you have subject access requests and right to be forgotten requests, I'm sure you're very cognizant with all of that side of things. But certainly then in terms of from an IT governance point of view, I think there's a huge amount of work that the DPOs need to be having with the IT teams to make sure that they understand that they can make sure that the IT teams have invested in the right things to protect the data once it's held, not just in terms of looking at the consent front end piece and how the marketing side of things is managed, etc. So the second part is then how do we recover? Do we pay the ransom? Do we, if we have a ransomware attack? If you do so, does it put you onto a nice low-hanging fruit list that everyone looks at and goes, okay, well, they're a payer. They've already paid once. Should we go and attack them as well? And there's lots of information that's shared on the dark web in terms of those people who are identified as easy pickings. So be very, very conscious and very, very careful about doing that. But obviously, one of the things you want to make sure that you do is to protect into a position where you're not going to be liable or susceptible to ransomware attacks, etc. Also need to look at what that impact means in terms of the GDPR, what type of data has been that's been encroached into, has it been stolen, has it been taken off elsewhere? How do you know what data you've got? How much data is there that's around that people don't actually know whether that data, what type of data that is, i.e. unstructured data, what personally identifiable information sits within that unstructured data? And there's a lot of things to be cognizant of and a lot of things to be considerate of. And what we try to do at Iomart is to help through that process and give organizations the tools that they need in order to be able to, in the mainstay, from an infrastructure and a data security point of view and data management point of view, to be able to mitigate those risks and enable them to go where they need to go and protect themselves moving forwards. Now, in amongst all of that, one of the biggest things that everyone, I'm sure, is very cognizant of as well is that Of those surveyed from the KPMG Harvey Nash survey, 35% of organizations said that cybersecurity skills were the most rare and most scarce. So you have all these threats, all of these challenges, all these regulatory compliance requirements, the change in COVID that's come around, but the amount of people that are available to actually, who are skilled to be able to support organizations to mitigate these challenges are few and far between. And the skilling people up takes time. Getting access to those resources takes time, and that's really where Iomart comes into its own. So we've built up a wide-ranging global data management and managed security service offering that enables organizations to utilize elements in silo where it makes sense, or to take a fully holistic service that enables them to provide full threat protection and data management services across their entire estate. Now that could well be for purposes of bandwidth and resources. To run anything 24/7, any organization that's running 24/7, normally you need at least seven people to cover shifts, holidays, all of that sort of stuff. If you depend on your organization size, making that type of investment, not just in the technology, but in the people to support your organization to run 24/7 in a fully secure and locked down position is challenging. Obviously, for the large organizations, it's a lot easier to do. For the small and mid-sized organizations, it's still a challenge, but also getting the right people in place to do that can be a challenge even for the large organizations. So we've built up a service offering that's constructed around DDoS prevention, application defense, intrusion detection prevention, abnormal access protection, malware and ransomware protection, vulnerability scanning, AI security, and data loss prevention that effectively covers all of the areas that are housed within a hybrid cloud environment, whether that be on-premise infrastructure, networking security, public cloud, private cloud, offsite environments, and the data management side of things in terms of where that data is sat, whether it be at the front end in production, in the backups, or in archive storage. So our service is built up specifically around the three key component elements, which is around the ability to protect, to provide as much front end and edge protection as we possibly can to make sure that attackers have the hardest job that they're ever going to have to get into the systems in the first place. And as I say, one of the biggest challenges that anyone has is that people that are unscrupulous, that are trying to get into systems, are always going to be slightly one step ahead because they're coming up with new ways of getting in. So it's not necessarily always going to be a matter of if, there will be a when they get in. But obviously you want to put as much protection as you can in front at the front end to make sure that you're aware of what your security posture looks like, and also that you've got the right systems and processes in place to support and to protect as much as you can people from getting in. But when people do get in, you need to have the ability to detect that. You need to be able to provide monitoring of your infrastructure on a 24/7, 365 basis, because these attacks and these threats happen all the time, 24/7, right across the board. And then when an issue does happen, you need to be able to respond. You need to be able to take immediate action to remediate that issue, not just at the point, but also for any changes that need to happen to make sure that that same issue then can't happen again. And we provide a service that will absolutely do that. And alongside that, we also provide, from a data management point of view, the ability for the data that is sat within an organization to be completely indexed and searchable down to, as an example, a national insurance number, whereby you can put in a national insurance number into a search engine, enabling you to find every single piece of data that sits in every single piece of IT infrastructure across public cloud, private cloud, on-premise, off-premise, backup data, archive, so that when the ICO say to you, do you know where all your data sits? Are you protecting it all? That you can identify it and you can understand exactly where it is. So if you have a subject access request or a right to be forgotten request, that you can comply accordingly with that. And the service that we provide, again, is fully global and provides the ability to have mutable backups to make sure that that data isn't compromised via ransomware, so that people can't put ransomware into the backups, and then when you restore a backup because you've had an issue, you're just restoring the ransomware again. You can make sure that you're mitigating that risk from that way around as well. I'm very conscious of time. I'm conscious that we overran our start slightly, so apologies for that side of things. But the main part, I think, from our point of view, is just making sure that we present to our organisations the ability for people to protect themselves, both the data and from a security point of view. absolutely welcome the opportunity to work with the organisations that are here today, and we are running a free vulnerability scanning offer at the moment to enable us to help organisations to look at their security posture, and to help them to start that journey of moving from a position potentially of weakness in some areas or wide scale, or just revalidating that their security posture is where it needs to be. So we welcome the opportunity to work with each and every one of you today. If you have any queries, we're running on a Q&A panel later on this afternoon. We also have our booth available as well. So thank you very much for your time, and apologies for the challenges we had around the technical issues earlier on.